my face. I would like to have my face. It has been a while since I've practiced this version of myself. You see, it is not exactly like acting. It's like tapping into some different part of my brain. It gives me access to different feelings and a form of expression. It gives me freedom. You see, when I first learned to speak this American English, it was very difficult because it is not a personality that I am associated with, and so part of the struggle with learning a new language is the different kind of feelings that are not inherent and native to my form of how I grew up in Germany, when I was a little boy. And the personality is very closely associated to the form of expression in which we find ourselves and feel comfortable in the sense of this is who I am, because our language is very closely associated to who we are, and so the way we speak is actually a form of an expression of self. And I know that sounds perhaps rather obvious, but think about how you feel when you speak words that are familiar to you compared to when you're learning a new word. Part of the problem is when I learn a new word and I try to put it into a sentence, there's an initial self-consciousness of this is not a word that I am perhaps allowed to use, because people will think this word does not belong to him. He does not use this word before, and people will notice when you are in the process of expanding your vocabulary that they might look at you a little bit funny, like, why are you putting on this act? This is not who you are. But you see, for me, as someone who is not a native English speaker, I was always in the process of expanding my vocabulary, so I had to get used to this sort of suspicious, incredulous look that people often gave me when I was still learning how to express myself. So earlier on, my persona was like that of kind of a simpleton idiot, because that is what people are comfortable with when you don't have a wide vocabulary, and then that can become sort of a trap because they sort of expect you to be this sort of person. And then when I was in middle school and high school, like this, it gave me a natural propensity to behave kind of like a stoner, because that gave me a legitimate sort of reason to be kind of like simple in my form of communication. So this was all in the process as I was still learning how to speak English in the more satisfying way for me, and I often had dreams about that my jaw was frozen somehow, and it was a terrible feeling to not be able to express myself in a full way that was satisfying to me, because I always felt like there was more that I wanted to say to connect with people and to point out things that I felt inside, but I had no words for, and observations and thoughts that I had within me, even though my thinking was no longer in my native language. So I've learned to think in a very instinctive sort of feeling way, because underneath our thoughts there are these impulses, and those things, they form into thoughts because we have the habit of associated feelings that turn into these thoughts. And so what I'm demonstrating here is a different personality, as opposed to, I'll switch to my normal personality here, and so it might seem very jarring to see this type of character shift where I'm like getting more and more fluid and sort of Russian accent, and I can feel like how there's ways in which when I speak with a Russian accent I can speak more fluently and with less self-consciousness about a greater amount of energy being expressed. through my words, as opposed to this is my more default, persona, what most people would say, this is me being myself, but in reality, this is just me being a practiced version of myself as an English-speaking person. So anyhow, so the whole point of this was really, I just wanted to practice my sort of Russian accent, because I hadn't done that in a while, and I feel like it really like opens up the channels in my brain to be more sociable and friendly, because I don't know, for some reason, perhaps the Russians that I viewed are more sort of gregarious and warm, and have a sort of natural sort of masculine confidence that I like. But anyway, what's your question?
Well, I could not help but notice the fluid flow in the Russian accent that is absent in your English-speaking, American-speaking. And so it occurred to me that in the speaking that you learned, and particularly having to go through the enculturation where people treat you as so weird and odd when you don't have confidence with your speech.
Right.
And then that sort of becomes part of you.
Yeah, because they're always sort of like looking at me as if like what's he gonna say next? Like I don't really feel comfortable with his like searching for words, and I like people are empathic, so they get uncomfortable when they watch someone struggle, and then that like makes me more self-conscious, so it's like a feedback loop of self-consciousness.
So I noticed that in your English American speech, you're more halting,
right? Because I'm like
studied.
I'm used to like searching for words, because I'm like in the mode, that's like the mode in which I learned to speak English. Now,
because you have words, it almost seems like a mask, because it's what you wore always.
Right, because it's just now it's more of a habit rather than the reality. And so what I like to do, which I'm glad you asked these questions, the reason I like to try out different characters is because like it loosens up my brain, and it allows me to then, when I shift back into my ordinary, more practiced personality, it allows me to like take some of that wiring that I learned through doing different personalities, that gives me a wider range of notes that I can hit within my normal speaking voice. So
yes, and speaking to your sister in terms of her being a German speaker, a natural German speaker, and you being a natural German speaker who had that sort of ripped off like a limb.
Right, yeah. Because very abruptly,
in her words and in how she speaks with you, she struggles with English. Very good English, very mindful. But in one particular case, she's attempting to tell us some technical information that she's learning. And she said, I'm sorry, I can only give this information in German.
Right, yeah.
And the pain in her eyes.
Yes.
At that moment.
Yeah, no, I felt that pain many times myself, and
that's what I thought.
Trying to express ideas that all of a sudden it's like, God damn it, like I really want to make this connection with a person to like show them something, demonstrate something, and then it's like, fuck, I can't.
Didn't have the English for
and then I just feel like I've disappointed myself and everyone, that I've spoken to. It's
And then like any human being, if we get insecure, frightened, troubled, we revert back to our primal. And your primal is not English.
Right.
And so you often reverted to silence.
Yeah.
Where you really looked like you wanted to speak, but you didn't have the words.
Right, and I just had to like sort of sit with whatever like is stirring inside of me and watch as it sort of unfolds, because like sometimes I just had no words to really, put to what my experience was, and it was, it's kind of a scary feeling, but also I think it gave me a unique point of view about the human experience.
It did make me think that all children in every country around the world should be taught universal sign language. I haven't learned it, so I don't know, but it's the theory that if you go to another land, you still have a voice in your hands.
Right.
And because I've seen you in many a situation where people have brought a dynamic your way, which you didn't. In German, you probably would have been spontaneous, but in English, you were just sort of like, let me out of here.
Right, like, because I don't really understand these cues, and I'm not sure what to do with them.
Right. So I really love, I love, of all your videos, this one touches my heart so deeply.
Yeah, and it's funny how it just sort of like spontaneously unfolded. Like,
Yes.
we had no idea we're gonna be having this conversation.
Right.
So,
Yeah. But it's fantastic.
Yeah, very
and
interesting.
everyone should understand
Yeah.
that they do likely in our culture live in straitjackets of personalities that are not
Right.
the whole of who they are.
Yeah, and that's one thing that will be illuminating for anyone who like becomes bilingual. Is it makes you realize like how much of what you believe to be is determined by the language and the culture that you grow up in, and then going to a different culture, now suddenly all these things that you took for granted, you realize, oh, there's like a broader range of reality to what the human condition is. And I think it's a healthy thing. It's a very healthy thing for human beings to do. And I think we definitely always need those people who interface with other cultures and then come back to sort of relay this broader human experience. I know that practically not everyone is going to interface with other cultures, but I think that is sort of like that's like one of the important sort of roles of people, to be explorers and to gain this understanding and then relay that understanding to other people.
We have a new friend, not someone we would expect to call a friend based upon the roles that we have relative to one another, and given that he's very introverted and was forced into a situation where, in a sense, a very awkward situation where he has to sort of see himself as in a lower position than us. We didn't ask for that,
right?
But he recently had a stroke, so he can't speak. If he had just one hand that could speak,
right,
then he'd be dandy. And so we have to, at the present time, he's going through the therapy, and we're having to sort of say, is it this?
Right, we have
very
to
slow
process of elimination.
But what we love is that we can see his personality.
Yeah, and that's another thing that you might learn when you're dealing with someone who's nonverbal, is how to be very quiet and to apprehend, what you'll pick it out of their brain by being very empathetic, and it allows you to really step into someone else's shoes when you don't have their words to guide you, because you get to know them on a human level that you might not be used to.
Let me give an example.
And most people might find this uncomfortable, just because this is a very intimate. It requires you to be very intimate and quiet to really be with a person, to actually to find out what they want. You sort of have to experience what their experience, through empathy, and then it'll come to you, and often then it'll be like, oh yes, this is what I wanted, or the nonverbal equivalent of a yes.
So what you're saying, I'm not going to give the details on this. We walked in to visit someone today who was in a nonverbal state, who was not able to, this is not the stroke victim, but another person, not able to put into words what they felt at that moment. But this person had such an animated, lived her life with letting her face speak her feelings.
Right.
And so we took pictures, because her face spoke 1,000 words. Yeah. There was no, but by tuning into what her face said.
So she almost had she's almost bilingual in the sense that her face was so emotive and expressive that she still had a satisfying means of communicating, with those in her environment. So that's another, form of expression that could potentially give you, give us a broader range of, avenues of communicating with people.
And just yesterday, even though she was very weak, we watched the entire spectrum from a joyous look that she gave one person, that she really felt that person needed upliftment. And so the biggest smile.
Right.
And then another person attempting to do something she did not want. And the most, her foul language in that look I've never done before.
Right.
I mean, she really cursed that person out with a look.
Right.
I don't know if you saw that one, but I've seen it many times.
Oh yeah. She likes drama, and we love her drama because it's fun.
But my point is people are not animated,
Right. Yeah.
and maybe they need to find their true voice.
In general, yeah. So like, there's a lot of nuances to communication, and we can all become more masterful and mindful of our expression. And we shouldn't, like, I think people often like are so married to this idea of, well, this is who I am, like, and if they like try out some new form of expression or expansion of expression, like with more enthusiasm or with more flexibility or whatever, or in a slightly different with a slightly different accent, then they say, well, I'm not being myself, so I don't feel comfortable. But I think there's a lot of benefits to practicing being more emotive and having a broader range of expression, because you'll find more like what is actually your true self, and not just what's like the habit self that you've formed over the years, and now it serves your sort of your basic game plan for the day, so that you don't have to become uncomfortably conscious in your interactions.
My wife, in the last 2 months of her life, when it occurred to her that death may well be very near, and she's coping with how she feels about that possibility, because she had, due to suffering, wanted to lean into that, and in other ways she loved life so much, so she adopted for the last 2 months a voice up here, and it's a very little a pretending little child voice. And so I talked to the doctor, and he says, why is she talking like that? And it was so obvious to me. She felt very fragile.
Yeah.
And this was a place that she could express her feelings.
Yeah.
Because children are allowed to feel fragile just in the way they talk. They're presenting themselves as fragile small beings. Right. She felt very fragile. And where I want to start to cry is, and one of the last conversations I had with her, where I'm attempting to do things for her that she's requested, she shifted out of this voice and she said, I love you. I've always loved you. I trust you. Thank you. Thank you for doing your best to see to it that I'm staying alive. I really want to stay alive. I said, okay. And she said, good. She shifted out of it.
Yeah, shifted back and forth. Yeah.
But people should be allowed to have more latitude in how they express their hearts.
Yeah.
And because we had 40 years together, she knew what words would work with me, what ways of shifting her voice, as does the woman that we encountered last night and today with the face that's so capable. So that's one of the things you're talking about, is expand. That you're whether other people want to do it, you're just saying you've really liked finding a way out of the rat hole.
Yeah. And it's through practicing different personalities. Anyhow. So we'll leave it there. I'm getting hungry. Have a good one.